Today we'll be making a macrame plant hanger that can hold 2 small plant pots. Can make them a little bit bigger, but I'd recommend sticking to small ones. If you've bought my kit, you should have 2 different lots of lengths of bobbiny cord, which is this lovely like cotton cord that comes in loads of gorgeous different colours. So we're going to start with a Larks Head knot. So you fold each cord in half individually, make a loop and then pull the ends through that loop around your little wooden ring. And you're going to keep your long and short lengths separate because you're going to alternate which way they go. So you're going to have one long one, one short one, all of the long ones will go in one direction, all the short in the other. So you might have seen just then on one side there's like a little bobbly bit. So the best way to work out which direction to go in next is to fold your next piece in half and put it so it's going through the ring in the same direction as that little bubble right there. And then when you pull it through, it will end up on the opposite side. You alternate them just because it sits a little bit nicer when you've got loads of cords on, because if they're all facing the same direction it can be a little bit one-sided and a little bit wonky. So keep going on like that, make sure you're alternating long and short and which direction they're going in. I'm going to speed up the next bit simply because if not the video ends up being about 40 minutes long, and you can always wind this back and re-watch bits if you need. So it'll end up looking something like this, so really nice and neat. So next thing we're going to do is a square knot, and square knots are the basis of all macrame and they have this kind of zigzag shape going on. So you're going to divide your cords into 3 groups of 4. So you've got middle cords and then the right hand set, form a loop and go over those middle 4. Then the left hand goes in front of that, behind those middle cords and up where your thumb is. So it's kind of making a little figure of 8 around those middle cords. And then you pull it tight while hanging on to the bottom cords at the same time. Then do the same thing but on the left hand side, so left goes over the middle cords, right goes in front of that, behind and up through the loop on the left hand side. So those 2 movements make 1 square knot. So then I'll show you what happens if you don't hang on to those middle cords. So the middle cords are called filler cords or sometimes inactive cords. So they should kind of be like a steel bar. And if you don't treat it like that and hold on to them, then you get a big kind of like lumpy bit at the back or at the front. And it just makes your macrame look much messier. So if you pull that down, you can see how much space is in between it. And you don't want there to be any gaps particularly. So it's best to make sure that as you do it, you're holding that middle cord really tight and pulling things up around it. And you should have a really nice, neat, flat lot of knots like that. So that's 2 square knots, and you should have kind of something that looks the same on the back as on the front. So this will create 3 different strands. So then you're going to use a bulldog clip and mark off about 9 centimeters. And then you're going to make sure that the shortest cords are in the middle, because like I was saying about filler cords, those aren't going to get shorter as they go, so you want the longer ones to be on the outside, because as you do macrame with them they'll shorten. So now you're going to have 2 in the middle and 2 on the outside. So you're going to do the same thing as you did before, make sure those middle ones are straight. You're going to do a loop with the right hand over the middle, left goes in front, behind and up through the right hand side again. And so this is a spiral knot. So this will make a really, really lovely kind of double helix shape. So on the second one, rather than changing sides, you keep doing it on the right hand side, and that's what makes it spiral. So just keep going like that, and you just make sure that you pull it tight every time. So in front, behind. With those 2 filler cords doing absolutely nothing other than staying like a steel bar in the middle. And you can count how many you've done by counting the straight lines in the middle. Whereas before with the square knot you get a kind of zigzag shape, with this one you get really kind of straight ladder rungs in the middle. So you don't want there to be gaps in between them, you want those straight lines to sit right underneath each other. So you're going to do 10 of these on each of those 3 sections. So this makes a really lovely piece of macrame. So I'm going to speed up the next bit just because if not you'd be watching it for ages, and you can always wind back and watch what I've just done because it will be exactly the same on the next lot. I'd recommend when you're doing the next 2 strands, rather than measuring 9 centimeters, I would just kind of measure against the first one, because if you think the middle cords will often be a tiny bit higher up than the other ones, then they end up all a bit skew width if you measure 9 centimeters exactly. So you can do this with all sorts of different cord. You can use twine, t-shirt yarn. I just really like the bobbiny rope because it's really easy to undo if you do something wrong, and it comes in so many gorgeous colours. So this is terracotta, so if you're wanting to get a kid off me, you can choose this colour, but there's loads of others too. So next thing to do is undo those knotted middle cords, and you're going to get some beads. So these are the ones that I supply in the kits because they're really easy to get through the hole. So you kind of just put them up against the hole, really compress them and twist them through. Whereas some other beads I use, you have to have like a special tool to get it through. And pull it up, make sure there's no little loops like there, pull that through, and then you do the same thing with all of the others. So the next thing you're going to do is underneath each one of those you're going to do another 10 spiral knots. So you make sure when you do this that the first one you do encloses around that bead really nicely so it doesn't like pop out to one direction, because sometimes if you do it a little bit too tight it kind of sits a bit weirdly. Then you just keep going with that. So the next thing to do is measure 4 centimeters and then get a middle and an outer cord to the nearest middle and outer on the next section, and you're going to do 2 square knots to join them all together. So this is meant for quite a little pot, so if you did want to use a slightly bigger plant pot you'd just make more distance, so you do kind of 6 centimeters, 7 centimeters, but then you do lose the length in your pot. So you're going to do square knots again, so like you did at the top, but this time with 2 in the middle and 1 either side. So 1 on the right hand side, 1 on the left hand side to make 1 square knot. And you're going to do that twice. So you can see the difference, how when you change sides it flattens it, and when you keep on the same side it twists. So now you're going to do the same thing again and get a middle and outer cord to another nearest middle and outer cord. So you're creating this kind of basket for your plant pot to sit in, so it'll create a kind of like diamond shape around it and just give it lots of support from all sides. And then you'd do the same with the last grouping of 4 that's left over. I sometimes find it easier just to turn the whole thing round for the last grouping, just to make it all make a bit more sense and just a little bit more accessible. So now we're going to do like we did at the top again and do just a big square knot with everything to bring it all together. But it's best to separate the groups of 4 out again like this. So it gives you an extra kind of like V shape going towards the bottom of your plant pot, just to give it that little bit of extra support. So then you can test your plant pot in it and check it's the right kind of dimensions for it and that it sits happily in there. Next thing to do is measure 13 centimetres, put your bulldog clip on again. Make sure that if you've got any shorter cords, now these are in the middle, but often they'll all end up being a similar length now. So you're going to do some more square knots, so we're going to do 3 lots of square knots on each section to begin with. You're going to measure 3 centimetres or longer if you want a bigger pot in it. And then we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before, where you join them together, and you can use a bulldog clip for this bit or you can just freehand it like I'm doing. So you're going to do 2 square knots all around all of those cords again, so you create another nice basket shape. Now at the bottom, you can either do another big square knot to finish it off, so this is a really good sturdy way to give it a really solid base. Or instead of that, if you want to, you can do a really big spiral at the bottom. And this works a lot better if you've got loads more cord left over. So with mine, I've got loads of cord left over, so I can do like a really good big spiral. The last option's a gathering knot, so if you're doing this from one of my kits, then you should have an extra piece of cord that's 50 centimeters long. So you kind of form a little loop like that, so you've got a long section and a looped section, put it around the bottom, make a fist, and then with the long piece, wrap around underneath your fist. And you have to pull it really, really tight. It can be really fiddly to do this bit. And you're wrapping upwards towards that loop. So you have to keep a really good tension on it and make sure as you're wrapping it that you're kind of stacking it on top of itself so it looks really, really nice and neat and it's got a really consistent thing going on. So I sometimes do this where I'll wrap it round, but it does get in a little bit of a tangle, but it's sometimes a good way to jumpstart it. So when you're happy with the length of it, then you can get the long piece and feed it through the loop at the top. And this is a really good height to do that at. So you want to just have a couple of centimetres underneath your last square knots. So then loop that through, hold on to it, pull that bottom cord, and just like magic it will disappear that top bit away. And kind of pull the top as well to even it out and just manoeuvre it a bit so it looks really nice and neat. And then you can chop that excess bit off and then chop the whole thing to whatever height you like. I was a bit disappointed that I cut this much off because it had quite a lot of excess, so it would have been quite nice for it to be a bit longer than that, but it's totally up to you. And then put your plant in and check it looks alright. And then it's time for a brew. Thank you so much for watching this video. All of the stuff behind me and all the materials I've shown you today are available in a handy little kit. Comes in loads of different colours, so I'll be putting a list of those all up on my website. So if you've already bought the kit, thank you so much, I really, really appreciate it. And I'll be putting loads more of these online in the next few days with different macrame instructions for different size pots and all sorts of different things. So if you're interested, let me know. If you've got any feedback, let me know that as well. And if you need any extra help on anything, that's all good as well. So thank you so much. You can find me absolutely everywhere at Darn It Workshops. Thank you again. Have a good day.